Alright everybody, welcome back to Just Lucky. Today we're going to be going over the developer updates for this week, the one from the 16th and the one from the 19th, which comes out today, the day that I'm recording this. I recorded the one for the 16th completely, and then I realized my mic was muted the whole time, which is kind of a disaster, but we're going to be going over it again, and that's okay. That's okay. We're going to be going over anything that there's updates about and anything new. If there's just like feedback reports, we might end up skipping those, but don't worry, I will link both of the dev updates in the pinned comment below, so you can check that if you'd like to. Anyways, we've got a lot to do, so let's get into it. This week, we've moved to 2 dev updates a week, on Tuesdays and on Friday. We'll do this for a few weeks and eventually drop down to once a week, which is kind of good. That makes it a lot easier for making content about the developer updates. We can just do it all at once a week. That'll be really good, and we'll just have to see how that goes. But I think it's really going to be really good for us. Probably better for everyone to kind of understand without getting like a bunch of information thrown at them all the time. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my opinion. Upcoming releases. This week, we plan to release 2022.2.p3 out to live. This means that the features that are in the live beta right now will be available for everybody. If you'd like to see what features these are, check out some of our posts from last week. You can also check out the patch notes. It's been updated with the stuff we released on Friday. I think it'd make an interesting video to talk about strictly the patch notes. Maybe they talk about something else there. I'm not really sure, but I'm kind of interested in seeing what they've added to the patch notes for the update. Next up, we have 2 main focuses in parallel. We're aiming for more iterations on features, while we also push for 2022.3.1, which includes the main menu 2.0 revamp, which I'm pretty excited for. We haven't really seen much of it, but I think the main menu 2.0 looks so much better than the launchpad we have now. We've only seen it a couple times in previous dev updates. It's really nice looking in my opinion. Much better. Main menu 2.0 revamp. We've been working on the new main menu revamp for a very long time. You might have caught a preview of it in one of our previous dev updates where we showed off the movable menu. We're planning on putting the new main menu into beta very soon. Unless something changes, it should be live compatible, so we'll be able to use it while we iterate it and improve it during the beta process. Right now, we're planning for it to be the main feature in 2022.3.1, which, as we noted above, may be coming out as soon as next week. Fingers crossed. We try to keep big feature releases like this limited to single features to reduce bug reporting strain. So that update may focus entirely on the new menu. Again, plans in flux, so this might change. We'll have some more communications lined up when we release so that we can properly introduce the new UI to everyone. Not much other info for now, but we thought we'd set you up. I'm excited that it's getting really close to being in the game. Again, it looks really cool. Visual adjustments. This feature allows some adjustment to how VRChat appears, primarily in color adjustment to ensure individuals with color blindness have some options to help them use our UI and enjoy VRChat. It also includes the ability to adjust screen brightness and reduce post-processing bloom intensity, or turn it off. We last talked about this feature here. This feature is in continued development and had to return to QA to get some bugs addressed. I'm glad that they're working on this still. I do think it's probably because it is an accessibility thing, I think it is probably, in my opinion, slightly higher priority maybe, and I think that it's good that they're working on that still. I'd like to hear more about that. Quick menu UI improvements. With all the features that we've been adding to the quick menu, it became apparent that scrolling and section collapsing behavior of these sections wasn't ideal. So we did some work to improve it. Here's a video of our QA team trying to break the quick menu. Notice the improved scroll bar and how the menu remembers the previous position when switching tabs. Also, when you fold categories up, you no longer teleport across the menu. Nice. Next up, portal placement. We're implementing a way to vastly improve portal dropping. When you drop a portal right now, you blindly drop it in front of you, hoping that the location where you're putting it is valid. No more. Now you get a nice UI showing where the portal will be, and if the portal is valid or not. We've shown these graphics off before, but just to catch you up, so this is the art for the invalid portal placement and the valid portal placement, what it will look like. We also saw this artwork before for the portal drop placement. Nothing new here. It looks the same. This feature has been queued behind other tasks as we became resource constrained and had to wait to assign someone for implementation. Some work got done and now task has a prototype. It's waiting for initial testing and iteration. Even more personal mirror iteration. As we talked about last time, we had to make some trade-offs in how we implemented handling of transparency on avatars in mirrors. We've seen some feedback from users in the live beta, and we're still researching the best path forward. Handling transparency in mirrors across multitudes of user-creator shaders is tough, and there hasn't been an ideal solution we found so far. Also, the face mirror has a new scaling feature. That's way easier to show off. Unlimited mirror resolution. We got some feedback last time that users want to be able to save the unlimited mirror resolution instead of having to restart it per session. So we did that. It saves between sessions. Initially, we did this because setting your mirror to unlimited resolution devours system resources, and someone clicking on a bunch of settings might not realize that they just completely filled up their VRAM by clicking the button. The setting has a warning, but it can be a challenge to get important complex information comprehended when someone's smacking buttons. We were able to mitigate part of this issue because another non-user facing task we were working on, where the user settings can get sent to an output log. This means, at the very least, the VRChat support agents will be able to see that setting and potentially diagnose issues faster. Hide avatar by distance. This feature is getting some more iteration to address some bugs and issues. First off, users that you've blocked still have their proxies show up when they're outside of the radius. This was fixed. Also, Fizzbones poses would get reset when the user left the radius and re-entered. This wasn't desirable, so we also fixed this. Finally, our investigation into animators resulted in us deciding that the lowest risk approach is to simply disable all renders on avatars when they're hidden. Animators still run, so the state of the avatar would still be fine once it shows again. This will incur a performance cost, however, especially in cases where an avatar's animator is poorly made. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, so we decided to err on the side of not breaking avatars for the time being. For now, animators will continue to run, but renders will be turned off. Of course, this isn't a final decision, and we may return back to this later if we can come up with a better solution. All three of these tasks were in QA testing, and some have passed. Avatar haptics. We last talked about this feature here, but in short, avatar haptics allows someone to pat someone on the head, touch them on the arm, or grab their tail, and your controller will respond with some haptic feedback. No avatar setup is required for this. For a little bit of tech insight, it uses a special rendering pass that detects avatars and depth, and uses that to calculate haptic strength. One challenge we're finding is that the Valve in-depth haptics aren't giving us great haptic feedback. This is because the input hooks available to us are limited, since we're still using legacy input. Upgrading our input integration is a very high impact task, as in, we'd have to change a whole bunch of code, and therefore, out of scope of avatar haptics. But it does put more pressure on us wanting to do the input upgrade sooner than later. For what it's worth, we already really wanted to upgrade our input system anyways. This is just yet another reason. This task is getting some engineering and optimization attention because it uses some techniques that could impact performance. Next up, we have some chat box updates. We've gotten a ton of feedback from people using the chat box in live beta. We've read as much as we can and we're still gathering more. There's a lot of people asking for stuff that we've already had on the roadmap, in addition to the bug reports, so let's catch you up. If you're not familiar, the chat box allows you to send messages in text format to users that are near you in the same instance. The chat box appears above your head when you send a message. The intent behind the chat box is to provide an alternative way of communication that is as similar as possible to communicating with voice in VRChat. We want everyone to be able to talk with their friends in VRChat. But we also don't want to turn VRChat into a general chat, text chat room, or IM service. The chat box is meant for ephemeral messages that allow people near each other to communicate, but disappear once they're gone, just like voice. Keyboard. A lot of people have talked about our keyboard. The new chat box feature and keyboard paste buttons have a lot of pressure on it. A lot of people aren't a fan of our implementation, and we aren't either. What? Why they released it if they didn't like it? It's hard to use and slows everything down when it pops up. We're planning to redo our keyboard, likely sometime after the new main menu is released. Currently, we're in the design and iteration phase. We have a list of internal requirements for a new keyboard, and are figuring out the nuts and bolts of what we want the ideal VR keyboard to look like. This is a high priority task, as we've got a lot of new features pushing on the keyboard. However, due to its scope, it'll come a bit later. Chatbox sound. We've received feedback that folks want a sound to be played when a text is sent. We think that's a good idea. I also think that's a good idea. We'll be doing this and tying it to the user's voice channel. You can toggle the chatbox sound on or off for everyone in the quick menu settings. I think that's actually good because then it'll be like, if someone sends it over there, you'll be able to hear it over there. Or if someone sends it over like on that side of the room, you'll be able to hear it from over there and you'll be able to figure out who it is. And I think because like voice is already like that, it might be easy to implement that way. I'm not sure. We're also going to provide an OCS endpoint for text finished, so you can play the sound at the appropriate time. As a final note, muting people, either directly or via safety menu, hides their chatbox right now, and it'll also turn off the chatbox sound. Chatbox options. In total, we'll have these settings that you can adjust. These aren't final. Chatbox sound toggles the sound that plays when someone sends a message. On or off. Display duration. Changes the amount of time messages stay above someone's head. 2 to 60 seconds. Wait, so is this going to pick like, can I pick how long my messages stay above my head? Or is it going to be like, I choose how long I see other people's messages? So I think that's important. Chatbox opacity slider changes the opacity of the chat box and related UI, 10 to 100%. Keyboard opacity slider changes the opacity of the keyboard that appears for chatbox, 10 to 100%. Chatbox size slider changes the size of the chatbox small to large. And last but not least, keyboard size slider changes the size of the keyboard small to large. Action menu and bindings. Right now, the method you use to pull up the keyboard is the action menu. However, there's been asks for other bindings, such as the traditional T key on the keyboard. However, we need to ensure that that's not going to squash world bindings, because world authors using Udon can bind to any key that they'd like, such as this needs to be easily enabled or disabled from the action menu. We're also investigating adding VR controller mapping, but we need to ensure we're not running over other settings. Chatbox position. We've received some feedback regarding the positioning of the chat box. By default, we're going to have it remain in its current position, which will typically be over the user's head. We realize that this might not work well with all avatars, so we'll be looking into providing a second middle option that will move the chat box up or down the chatter's avatar to match the viewer's height. We think this will help out users with shorter avatars. Chatbox visibility range. Right now, chatbox visibility is the same as user statuses, but we're thinking it should be about the same as voice settings, like fall off, earmuffs, etc. So we're going to change it so that the chatbox fades out at the same distance as voice does. I think that is actually a really good idea for distance. If they want it to be as similar to using your voice as possible, I think that's a good way to do it. Everyone or friends by default. We've seen a few requests from users who want the chatbox to be enabled for everyone by default. We understand the thinking here. Why not let everyone communicate how they want, without having to jump through hoops? While generally we'd agree, we think there's a pretty strong moderation and safety impetus to limit it to friends only to start. Users who have your chatbox hidden will be able to see an activity indicator when you type, so it isn't totally invisible, and how often users get reported for abusing it, and reassess the choice moving forward. There's no way that there's not going to be like 1,000 reports a day from having a chatbox. There's just no way. With that said, we'll be keeping an eye on things, and are open to changing this. It's often hard to gauge stuff like this via beta. Only about 4 to 5% of the user base has used the live beta, so it's a bit difficult to see how people will use it en masse. Additionally, beta testers consist of primarily very engaged users, so it can be tough to estimate how a new feature will impact newer or more casual users. Visibility in mirror. Ever seen a shirt in the mirror? It's backward. That's how mirrors work, but that's not necessarily how we want chat boxes in the mirror to work. We're looking for ways to solve this, likely the use of a shader. Filter. The chat box will have a basic profanity filter that will be on by default. We know that not all users will want this on, so we'll be able to turn this off locally. I'm glad that they didn't just put a global filter on that you couldn't turn off. That would be so annoying. I think a lot of people would stop playing VRChat at that point, just because there's so much weird moderation going on. But I'm glad that they have the toggle. You can turn it off, it'll be fine. Chatbox iteration. Here's what we're working on for the chatbox this week, in rough priority order. Hi. Fix a bunch of bugs. QM settings and new options. Typing indicator should disappear after 5 seconds. If player is muted or has voice blocked via safety, hide indicator. The typing indicator should inherit settings from the chat box, opacity size, etc. Mid priority. Inherit voice falloff range for chat box distance. Add sound on message send. Add binding for keyboard T? I think they're just using T as a placeholder there. Make keyboard bindable in VR. Implement middle chat box placement. Other stuff. Here's some additional items that aren't exactly ongoing development, but are things that we'd like to let you know about. More transparency is good by me. Continued development. We've been very busy over the last few weeks. The pace is quite high, but we're getting some seriously good work done rather quickly. However, the pace does bring up a few questions and challenges for our continued development efforts. I think this is where it's going to get controversial, because they could have implemented these things before, and then they wouldn't be rushed to do them after they implemented EAC, and a lot of people were upset about it. Just saying, I don't want to keep that fire burning alive longer than it has to, but they're kind of doing that to themselves. I think we'll eventually get through it as a community, but it could still be a little rough, I think. Let's see what they have to say. Let's just read. First off, we don't want to burn our team too hard. VRChat doesn't subscribe to the crunch culture of development, but there are certainly times where members of our team choose to go all in. We have a lot of people on the team that are personally and emotionally invested in VRChat. People who are oftentimes hired directly out of the community. For many of us, myself included, not me, Tupper I'm guessing, VRChat is a dream job. However, that passion can easily overflow into working yourself too hard. We must be careful to guard against the enthusiasm turning into anything resembling a requirement. and we continue to be successful in that regard. Second, despite the majority of these new features being things that we already had lined up for eventual release, and such as already had some good work done on them, there's a lot of missing polish and standing bugs that come with rapid development. We have been circling back to fix these issues as we moved along, pushing critical ones out as small patches while the live beta continues feature iteration. In other words, if I had a 2003 era under construction GIF to put here on every feature we've been working on, I would. I'm not really sure what that means, but okay. And finally, something to keep in mind is that the VRChat team isn't the size it was a year ago. We've doubled in size, which meant we had to do some serious organization. Although we weren't disorganized before, scaling our current size meant things needed to change. We had to figure out how to best organize projects internally, set up teams, structure, all that fun management stuff. Then we had to try things out to ensure it worked for us. We're through most of those growing pains now, so we've had more resources and more people to throw at more projects. Those projects are better organized, which helps us finish tasks more effectively and more efficiently. So now we can develop more things more quickly, simultaneously. We finally hit our stride not too long ago, which means we're now capable of the kind of rapid iteration you've been seeing from us. Of course, we're not done growing either. We're still hiring. I don't know why they put an ad for them hiring in the middle of this, because it's a little questionable sounding. That's all I'll say. But you know, I don't know if they want. I don't know. Never mind. All of that in mind, we feel it's important to tell you that we've seen all of your feedback over the last few weeks. We've learned lessons that fundamentally changed our development process and priorities for both the near future and far future. Your feedback is extremely important, and we want you to continue to tell us how to make VRChat better for you and the communities that you're a part of. We know how important VRChat is to you. VRChat is extremely important to all of us on the team. We want to keep working with you to make it the best place for anyone and everyone to express themselves, create art, learn new things, share experiences, have fun with friends, and make some new ones. Conclusion, remember, we're at 2 updates a week now versus daily ones from before. Expect the next one on Friday the 19th. Thank you. And we'll be covering that right after this one's over. Okay, it's still kind of fresh in my mind. Maybe it won't be later, but I feel like EAC, obviously, the implementation of EAC lit the fire under their feet to make them do more faster, right? There's no other way that because of the outrage, right? Like that's what everyone is probably assuming. I'm not saying EAC is bad or good right now. I'm just saying there's no way that that's not why, because that's when they started. That's exactly when they started working on all these features that they're adding. But now I feel like they're like I'm not saying this to be controversial or anything. I'm just saying I feel like they're like trying to be like, no. This is why we couldn't do it before. Like they're like trying to like what's it called? Like Okay, so I'm adding this later on because I kind of figured out what I was trying to say when I was recording this. And I just didn't know at the time. I feel like they're trying to like minimize their actions by trying to justify why updates aren't out to live yet, or like maybe things are taking longer. But like I feel like they only like force themselves to have this much work suddenly by introducing EAC sooner than later before everything was ready. Like they could have like whether you're for or against the EAC update, the whole thing was kind of handled badly. Like a whole bunch of features were taken away from players that allowed them to play the game, and then like some of them can't even play the game today still because those features aren't implemented in live, or like I don't know exactly how to explain. I just think that they're like trying to like justify their actions to us. They're trying to like minimize like the problem for some reason. It's very confusing. Like I don't know why they would explain that to us now a month later instead of way earlier if they were gonna. I don't know. I'm not them. I just wanted to try and explain how I feel. I know it's really confusing. Let's get to the next developer update. Okay, so we're on to developer update August 19th. It is about 1 billion degrees in my living room now, so I turned on my AC. I hope it doesn't impact audio too much, but I also think I did that last time and it wasn't too bad. So I hope it's fine. Release plans. First off, let's talk about our current plans for release of new updates and new betas. 2022.2.2 P3 live beta. Over the past week, we've been aiming to get a live beta out we could release to live first thing next week. Unfortunately, we ran into some issues with the live beta candidate, so this one isn't a release candidate. We're looking into updating the P3 branch early next week, and follow that up with a release as soon as we can after that. 2022.3.1 main menu beta. The initial plan was to get a new main menu beta out next week. We're still aiming for that, but considering how P3 has slipped, the main menu might get pushed a bit. Right now the main challenge is merging all of the changes and features from the 2022.2.2 patches and ensuring nothing gets clobbered. We'll keep you up to date if plans change. Chatbox safety design. We got a lot of feedback regarding the chatbox, primarily about its default display setting. So we spent time this week iterating on the design. Let's start off with something very important. Right now, including the live beta, the chatbox only shows for your friends by default. This can make it very hard for people to communicate with others if they aren't friends, since you have to learn to change the chatbox to everyone. This is further complicated by the fact that you don't have discrete per-user settings for the chatbox. So, we returned back to the origin design for the chatbox permissions, using the safety system. This new design adds the chatbox as its own discrete safety category, right next to voice. If we bring it in line with the voice settings, all safety modes will have the chatbox displayed and on by default for all other users. We're not quite sure setting those defaults are the right decision and direction we want to go, but we're discussing this internally and weighing our options. We're definitely considering all the feedback you've given us regarding this. Just like with voice, using the custom safety, you can turn on the chatbox for certain trust ranks. For example, you can turn off the chatbox for all users except for friends and trusted users. Again, by default, the chatbox will be on for everyone, just like voice. Additionally, you'll be able to override individual users similar to the show avatar 3-way toggle. That way, you can say, I don't care what my safety is set to, I just want to turn this person's chatbox on. We're also looking into adding per user opacity slider for chatboxes. So you can have everyone's chatboxes set to an out of the way level, then boost your friend's chatbox opacity so you don't miss it. This is analogous to the individual user volume sliders. Since chatboxes are visual and not auditory, there's an additional layer available. In the setting menu for chatboxes, you can also simply force the system on or off for everyone. By default though, this setting will always be set to safety, where the settings you have set in the safety menu will take priority. When your global settings have checkboxes on or off, overriding the safety menu will show the indicator showing that you've overridden the system to force it on or off. You'll also have the option to turn off typing indicators when the chatbox is hidden by safety settings. Finally, in the audio tab of the quick menu, we're adding a shortcut button that takes you to the chatbox settings. If you're curious, here's a screenshot of the design document where all these changes got hashed out. No matter how the design or the defaults end up, we have to wait on the main menu's release. That's because this change relies on the new safety menu. Alright, this is something I'm kind of interested in, and it is chatbox emojis. As an aside, we've also fixed the weird looking emoji. We've had an incomplete example emoji set present, by including an actual set of Noto Sans emoji. We fixed them so they appear properly in the chatbox, and other places. Shout out to the extremely rare emoji in name accounts out there. They also touched on more personal mirror iteration. Even more personal mirror work got done. The face mirror is now clamped inside the HUD so it can't fall off the canvas. This also plays nice with scaling. We also added a head tracked mode for the personal mirror. It took some work, but it works great with both pickup and immersive movement modes. We also added a new face mirror scaling icon, added haptic feedback on mirror hover, and grabbing, dropping, and fixed some bugs with mirror grabbing. We're also aware that some users' shaders have an issue in the personal mirror. We're looking into the best way to handle these cases. These changes are either in the P3 beta or will be included in the upcoming release. We also have more on avatar haptics. We're working on a system that'll make controller haptics give feedback when you touch avatars. We talked about this in our last dev update, which you guys all already know. For clarity, this system works by using a high-performance way to render meshes for detection without using a camera setup. This means that no special bones or avatar setup is needed, as it simply works out of the box. Here's how the haptic options look in the quick menu right now. Still getting iterated on, but getting close to a point where we're okay with throwing it into a live beta. Earmuff improvements. We've got a few adjustments and improvements to how earmuffs work on the way. First off, we're changing the slider snapping from 0.5 to 0.25, so you can get decently precise even with snapping on. Next, we've added a shortcut similar to the photo tab, where double-clicking the audio tab will toggle earmuffs on or off. We've changed the earmuffs visual aid so that it doesn't appear in cameras when your UI masking is toggled off. We added a synced earmuffs avatar parameter. Earmuffs, it's a bool that's true when your earmuffs are on, false when earmuffs are off. You can use them to add earmuffs to your avatar. Oh, that's kind of nice. Then people will know. That's kind of an interesting thing that you could add to avatars. I kind of like that. We also did some tuning on the avatar audio muffling portion of the feature, as it wasn't working quite right. Portal placement. We've had a few people ask about this feature. Don't worry, it's on its way. It is currently in iteration and recently had some design feedback. We don't have much to show off just yet though. Remember, just because we don't talk about something in the update doesn't mean we didn't work on it. Honestly, I feel like that's a little strange because isn't the point of the dev updates to talk about what they did work on? Additional emoji. We aren't quite ready to show them off yet. We only had a first pass on the art this week, but we're planning on adding some additional functional emojis. For example, we want to include emoji that you can tell someone you don't or can't use the microphone to speak. You can't hear what someone is saying, you want them to read or show your chat box, your battery is low, you're having connection issues, or there's a portal you want them to go through. Among other things, this isn't final or complete, and is just a section of what we wanted to fill. We've also been working with helping hands to get some additional ideas for functional emojis. Thanks y'all. We'll get you the previews in an upcoming dev update. Creator updates. Here's some additional updates that are related to creator tools for VRChat, like the SDK, the VRChat Creator Companion, Client Sim, Udon Sharp, and more. Client Sim updates. A few Client Sim issues got fixed. First off, we fixed the PS5 controllers, so they work to allow movement in the editor. Next, we fixed some further controller issues by addressing controller drift. Finally, we've fixed some problems with moved canvas items in Client Sim. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Client Sim the thing that you can add to your Unity so that you can test out, you can test play things that you make before you upload them because it's much faster to try? I think that's what it is. It sounds really familiar. I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Udon Graph. We're working on some pretty substantial upgrades to the Udon Graph that makes it a ton easier to use. Redesigned sidebar, which now lists all of your events and groups with clickable shortcuts. Tab system for switching between graphs. Shortcuts for common nodes and string, int, float, etc. Graph search for event nodes and groups. This has been in progress for some time. We'll know of some of the features in an upcoming dev update. I'm not that familiar with Udon, so a lot of this I don't really understand, but I hope it helps for those of you who do use it. Creator Companion. This isn't released yet, but the Creator Companion has an upcoming update to 0.3.6. This version includes a bunch of changes, fixes, and improvements. Fixes issues where projects with files larger than 2 GB would not be backed up. Pressing Show Me after making a project will now open the enclosing folder rather than the specific zip. Uses new package subdomain URLs for official and curated listings. Added many new pages to the documentation. Links to pages will fill out even if we push the new version live and publish all the pages. Hides packages with no valid versions listed. Fixes issue where migration would use the pre-release packages if they were the newest version. This VCC update is currently in QA. Once it's out, 0.3.6 will be a release candidate. Conclusion. That's it for this week. We'll see you again in the next week with 2 more dev updates, and hopefully we can sneak in that main menu beta. Cross your fingers. I definitely feel like this update was a lot more ensuring than the last one. I feel like in the last one, the August 16th one, they said some kind of weird stuff in a weird way, and it kind of left me feeling like I said, when I was explaining, it feels like they were trying to minimize the problem though. They were trying to minimize the fire that they lit themselves and justify it why they don't have stuff yet. But this one seems a little less like that, and I think that's good. I still think they're moving a lot slower than what they thought they might be, or what they announced that they would be after EAC was implemented. I feel like they promised a lot, which isn't all here yet, but they're working on it. It's only been a month, which seems like a long time, but also it's really not a long amount of time. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle still with VRChat. I still love VRChat, and I'm glad they're improving it all the time. They're working on stuff to make the game better. That's always good. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. I still think the August 19th one was a lot better. It didn't have weird vibes that the 16th one had to me. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm really interested. I would love to talk to anybody who is willing to talk about it. I always have a fun time doing that and chatting with people, seeing what everyone thinks. I think that's the end of this video because I am very warm and I want to go sit in front of my air conditioner. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It took a pretty long time to make, especially because I re-recorded the first one twice because my mic was muted. That's still embarrassing. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.